Hey, good morning, friends, and welcome to our Equip webinar. This is our second ever that we've done. Last week, we kicked off our Equip webinars here at the International Church of Barcelona by introducing them with a topic on contemplative prayer. And it was our take on this topic of just praying and reflecting deeply. And what an incredible morning we had, both in English and in Spanish. And we're excited to say that the recording for that webinar is going to be available on demand on our app and on our website soon. We're working to get those up there for you to watch those, and also you can feel free to share those with friends, family, etc. The same is going to be so today. We're really excited about this webinar today. Of course, our webinar is on budgeting. You signed up for it, so you know what this is about. It is a hot topic. It is a topic that is crucial right now. Many of us are thinking about money. I'm thinking about money. And it's all about budgeting, where your money goes and what you're telling your money to do. And I'm really excited about this particular topic, and our presenters today, Paul Luciani and Adam Highfill. These are two guys that have a high level of competency and understanding of the economy here in Barcelona, business, budgeting, money. They are longtime residents of this city and area. They have deep biblical knowledge, and they just have a great way of applying scriptural knowledge about budgeting and money to real life situations. Life is real is what's happening with you right now. And so excited about this. We want to let you know a little bit about how this is going to operate, our webinar, and all of them operate this way. But for about 40 to 45 minutes, maybe a little bit longer, our presenters will share particular information, and they're going to walk through a teaching that they've designed just for you to bless you and encourage you and equip you with just some ideas about, in this case, budgeting. While this course is being offered, while the webinar is progressing, there's a chat button in the bottom of your screen on your Zoom call there that you can click on if you have a question, or maybe just have a comment. You're like, man, that was really awesome. Thank you for sharing that. That really hit home. We want to hear all that stuff, but particularly if you have a question, because at the end of this webinar, we're going to go through and try to answer as many questions as possible in about 15 minutes or so. And so you can post those right at the bottom of your Zoom call on your screen. There's a button for chat, so click on that and you can enter that question. You can do it for in a way that everybody can see your question, or you can do that privately. And if you do it privately, message me, Mark McKinstry, directly, because I'm going to be proctoring the end and kind of sifting through the questions and presenting them to Paul and to Adam. And we're going to try to get as many of those as possible. So again, to everybody, welcome. We are glad you're here. I want to say welcome to Viola. Welcome to Candace, to Yagoda, to Emily. It's great to have you here. I want to say welcome as well to Jesse and Maria, to Meng. I believe Susanna is with us. To Ramon, mi amigo, welcome. To Susan, it's been a while since we've talked. Victor, to Zara, oh wow. Joelle, I am missing my ICB family, those face-to-face interactions, but this is a pretty good platform. So for all of you, just want to say welcome. And with that, I'm going to kick it on over to Paul, and he's going to get us going on this webinar. But again, get your cup of coffee. We're going to start in like 10 seconds. So this is it. I want to remind you, keep your video screen off. Everybody's muted too. But again, questions, put them in the chat, and we will look forward to answering those in just a minute following the great presentation that's to come. So again, welcome to everybody. And Paul, let's do it. Here you go. And we'll get there. We just got to unmute.
There we go. Now I'm not muted. Sorry about that. Well, I'm glad everybody's here to join us this day. I'm really excited about this. This is a new platform for me. And so it's been teaching for many years, but now on a webinar, this is new. So I'm excited about it. and people keep jumping in. So just remember this, keep your video turned off and your microphones turned off so it helps. And any questions can be added to the end. Excuse me. Well, before we get started on the Equip on the Budgeting webinar, let's start with a word of prayer. Mark, would you do us a favor of praying for this time?
Absolutely. Yeah. Father, we just thank you for this time that we can gather together here on a Saturday morning. Thank you for this technology. Though we long to be with each other face to face, this is just an incredible opportunity that we have to join together on a digital platform to dive into your word on this topic, which really is a sensitive topic and truly speaks to our hearts. Lord, I pray that you would help our hearts as we come into this to be surrendered, not just our minds. We're not just craving information, but Lord, I believe you want to speak to our hearts about how we think and deal with money. And I pray, God, that you'd help us to just have a posture of surrender, that we would leave behind preconceived ideas and come as learners and allow you to shape our values and our beliefs, maybe reshape those, and help us to just see things from a biblical perspective, from a scriptural perspective, and to be able to press forward. I pray for those who just have even concerns and worries, anxiety about this, because those are very real things. And I pray, oh God, that you would just speak to our hearts and give us peace and calm and help us to know that you're in control in all situations and that you are leading and guiding us and providing for us. You're a good Father. We love you. Bless Paul. Bless Adam as they share. Give them your words, your insights, I pray. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Well, we're here on the Equip webinar for budgeting, and I hope you're ready for a fun time of learning fun things. And Adam's here joining, and he's going to be sharing some of his ideas too and throughout. And this is a really interactive time. I will later on in the webinar upload a file that we're going to be using, kind of doing some of our budgeting. We'll give you some ideas in this whole process. But let's look at this. Budgeting is an opportunity to learn how to do a budget and have a Christian perspective on the resources God has entrusted us with. That's what it is, budgeting. But before we kind of go down this road, I want to share a little bit about my pilgrimage, my spiritual pilgrimage too, as money had a part of that too. So I want to share some of that too. Now, I remember growing up with my dad giving $5 or maybe, and this was in the United States, or sometimes maybe a big $20 in the offering in our religious tradition. And I had to ask myself as I was searching for God, thinking about this thing, and I'm thinking, doesn't my dad make enough money as a business owner to give more? Yeah, that was hardly anything. Even as a young Christian working as a volunteer in youth ministry and going to evangelical church, I was always living on the edge. I was a poor college student. I never budgeted. There wasn't anything to budget after paying the bill. I was just making by with my parents' help and stuff. And I want to share also too, my wife and I have been missionaries for over 28 years now. Many times along the way, we never budgeted either. But God met our needs, but we had that kind of thing saying we need to budget, we need to plan better with what many things we're doing. The Lord finally began to speak to me, especially as I translated this book called Funding Your Ministry. And it just really hit me. And I'm thinking, I'm not taking this seriously enough, God. So I need to be doing this more. So this isn't like it's an easy thing. It's a thing we need to take time to do. And as we go down this thing, I want to ask, how much should we give to the Lord? Well, if people get all excited, well, we'll give them our 10%. That's what most people say. That's our tithe. But I have a question for you. To who belongs our lives? All of it as Christians. Does that include money? That's a big question. All we have, all that we are belongs to Jesus if we're his followers. And that's the ethos of ICB too. So at the end, if you don't know Jesus, you can also jump in and we can share some more about that as well too. But we need to think about everything we are, everything we have belongs to Jesus. And we really need to believe it. So we're going to hit some of those topics and it's going to be pretty exciting. So I think we need to look at money, kingdom view, or cultural view. That's a big question. So before we actually sit down and start doing the numbers and figuring things out, we need to think of where our perspective is, and we need to address some of those issues. And I think we need to understand that many of our opinions originate from our parents, unquestioned evangelical traditions, obviously much depend on our country of origin, and or our common sense. Now, here's a tough question, and I've been saying this for years and years, and I didn't even know I was not the first one to say this, and probably won't be the last. Martin Luther said it best. There are three conversions: the conversion of the head, the conversion of the heart, and the conversion of the wallet. Believe it or not, yeah. And that was kind of interesting. As I always say, the last part of someone to convert is their wallet. So that has to do with this too. So we're going down this road, and be ready for a fun ride. And here's one thing. I want us to know that the Bible is our starting point, and it has over 2,000 verses about money. About money. When I'm talking about possessions, just about money, it has 2,000 verses. Let's look at Hebrews 12:28. And it says this: therefore, since we are receiving a kingdom that cannot be shaken, and so, something cut off here. Okay. Sorry about that. Therefore, since we are receiving a kingdom that cannot be shaken, let us be thankful, and so worship God acceptably with reverence and awe. And that's a big question too. And it talks about, and remember, we in Matthew 25 and verses 14 to 30, it talks about kingdom people are caretakers, not owners. And that's a big one. So before we go on to the other one, that happened. That was weird. And okay, go on to the next one. Luke 12:15. Then he said to them, watch out, be on your guard against all kinds of greed. Life does not consist in an abundance of possessions. Where is our heart in this whole process? We have to ask ourselves questions. In 1 Timothy, it says, 6:9, those who want to get rich fall into temptation and a trap, into many foolish and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction. The question is, do I secretly long to be rich? Am I surrendering to materialism? These are all important questions we need to ask ourselves. Am I a deeply thankful person? Do I live as if God owns it all, or just 10%? And the other question we have to ask ourselves, do we worry a lot about money? And as Matthew 6:24, no one can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. It's pretty strong words coming right from Jesus' mouth at the very beginning of his ministry. Now here, and I want to take this as a conclusion as we look at kingdom or cultural view. It's really important here. Before we go to this, do I have a generous spirit? Because this also takes a step to saying we need to examine our own hearts. Do I have a generous spirit? And in conclusion, would Martin Luther say my wallet has been converted? Many times following the advice of Christian friends may be more cultural than Christian. Difficult though it may be, make sure the Bible is your guide. But here, what are my action steps? That's as important. Step 1, I pray over all financial decisions because my money is not mine. Now, I'm a human being as well, so I think I need to listen to this teaching just as well. And the next one says, I express daily thankfulness to the Lord. That's talking about all the things I have. The next one, I know what form of coveting tempts me and reject it. And the next one says, I do not desire to be rich, but only to have what is needed to meet God-ordained life dreams. We're not done there yet. It says, I refuse to let worry about money occupy my thoughts. And the last one of action steps here, I cultivate a generous spirit, daily displacing a miserly spirit. We need to be willing to give, to pass on. Now with this section here, before we get down to more some of the budgeting stuff, Adam's going to be sharing some stuff here too. So we'll let him go up and take over the screen here, and he's going to be adding on some of his things. You're up, Adam. And there you go.
Thanks, Paul. That's a great introduction. Let me share my screen here. Definitely important things that we all need to understand before getting down to any of the nuts and the bolts, let's say, or any of the practical things that we're going to teach here today. I agree with Paul in what he said is, money has been a big part of my journey, even as a Christian. And money is something that I've learned a lot about from my parents, from, for good or for bad. I've learned about it in school. Most people think that I studied music and things like that in school and in university. I actually did not. I actually studied finance and business in school. So I've learned about a lot about money and money management and finance and that arena as well. But to be completely honest, the most that I've learned about finance and learned about money has been along my spiritual journey. I've made, we got a typo here, let me fix that. I've made a lot of mistakes when it comes to money in my day. I've also done, I think, a few things right, and the Lord has dealt with me in a lot of areas, even recently when it comes to finance. So some of these things that we're going to be talking through here, here's sort of an overview. We're going to be talking about giving, saving, and then some specific financial behaviors. Okay, and then later we're actually going to get down into what a budget looks like. We're going to walk through a budget worksheet together. Paul's going to lead us in that, and that's going to be great. And we're going to get really down to the practical side, so you can leave this time today really having an understanding of what the next step can be moving forward. So let me quickly make sure there's nobody in the waiting room. I'm getting some messages here. Hold on one second. Getting some messages here saying that there might be people trying to get in. Okay, I think we're good. All right, so just really quickly, some of the things that we're going to be discussing in this section are sort of like ideal type situations, right? We're all on our own journey. So there's no judgment here. Just some of the things that we're laying out are things that we all should be working towards, even myself. Okay, and so everything that we're discussing here is going to be from the perspective of this is the situation that we would like to get to. Okay, first, coming off of what Paul was discussing about sort of giving or finances, and do we have a kingdom view of finances, or do we have a worldly view? And one of the quickest places you can put that to the test is when you start talking about giving. Okay, giving is really a decision. Okay, and whether you have a lot of money or a little money, giving is a decision. And if you never are able to push yourself to give when you have little, it's going to be very, very difficult for you to make that decision later on when you have more. Okay. Dave Ramsey says that money amplifies who you are. If you're a stingy person when you don't have money, then you're going to be a stingy person when you do have money. If you have a bad temper when you don't have money, you're going to have a monstrous, ferocious, insupportable temper when you have money. Money amplifies who you are. So let's make the decision now when it comes to all of these topics we're going to be discussing, but especially when it comes to giving and being generous with God's money. And really, if we have a biblical worldview of what money is, we understand that everything that we have is God's. And so when we give money to God, we're not really giving something that was ours to Him. We're giving Him back what He has blessed us with. Proverbs 11:24 says, "The world of the generous gets larger and larger, but the world of the stingy gets smaller and smaller." 2 Corinthians 9:7 says that God loves a cheerful giver. Okay, so how should we be thinking about giving? Here's just a couple points. Again, this is just sort of brief. We could do a whole seminar or a whole series of seminars specifically related to giving, but here's just a couple quick points. We should give with a joyful heart. Okay, again, if we have a correct view of money, it will be a privilege for us to return our resources to God, the one who has given us everything that we have, right? And also, we should give in accordance to our resources, just like anything in our budget, or really anything in personal finance. It all goes in correspondence to the resources that you have available. And so I personally believe that you should allocate a particular percentage of your income that that you give back to God and to others. Okay, and I believe that percentage should be something that makes a noticeable difference in your lifestyle. Okay, now that we know sort of how we should give, let's look at what we should actually give to. There's a couple of things here. One is the tithe. Scripture talks about us giving to God's kingdom through our tithe. And that just means a percentage of our income that God has given us. And God specifically talks in Scripture about giving out of our first fruits, okay? Not waiting until the end of the month to see what we have left to give, but giving out of our first fruits. I mean, giving our first percentage. The tithe, many times, is giving your first 10%. Okay, and God promises to bless the giver. There's so many scriptures and passages that talk about money, but also about how God blesses people who give of the tithe in so many different ways. And we hopefully moving forward, we can share more of those ways and do maybe a giving workshop or something. But what you want to keep in mind here is that God blesses a cheerful giver, and he blesses a tither, someone who pays or someone who gives to the local church. Okay, and next, the next thing you should give to is special offerings and projects. I'm going to add in here, any opportunities that you see. Okay, and this is when we are financially healthy. Tithe, I believe, is for everyone, no matter where you are in your personal financial journey. Tithing is for everyone. Now, giving above and beyond the tithe, I believe, is reserved for when we are in a financially healthy place where we're able to give above and beyond as a blessing to others and ourselves. Okay, and the reason I say others and ourselves is because, again, God promises to bless a giver, and we are so blessed to give. We are in fact more blessed to give than receive. Okay, and so here's a couple just practical areas where you could give. For example, when ICB Cares has projects, when we talk about Jabulani at church, these are missions projects and things that we're funding around the world who are advancing God's kingdom. Agape, a ministry here in Barcelona right now that ministers to people in homeless situations. Nuevos Pasos is another ministry in South America that we support, who are advancing the kingdom of God there, where they're working. And so those are just examples of opportunities that are giving above and beyond the tithe, that are great places that we should be giving to once we are in a financially healthy position. Okay. Next, let's talk about savings. Okay, so savings is pretty simple, right? It's setting aside money for the future. And we're, again, going to look at this from a biblical standpoint. And I also want to look at it from a practical standpoint. There's really practical reasons why we should save. So let's look at a few biblical reasons. Proverbs 21:20 says that there is precious treasure and oil in the house of the wise who prepare for the future, but a short-sighted and foolish man swallows it up and wastes it. Wow, what a powerful verse that speaks to us so clearly about the importance of saving. Do you want to be a wise man who has stores and reserves of precious treasure and oil, or do you want to be the short-sighted foolish man who wastes it all? Right? Proverbs 6:6 says, "Go to the ant, O sluggard, observe her ways and be wise. These ants who have no chief or officer or ruler prepare her food in the summer and gather her provisions in the harvest." Genesis 41 talks about Joseph and the story of Joseph when Egypt was going to be going through a famine. He had a plan that was going to save the country a lot of heartache and a lot of pain. And his plan was to actually store up and hoard grain and other things that they were producing from, and crops they were producing. And he did so for several years. That way, when the famine came, they had reserves that they were able to tap into that were a blessing. And so savings is a blessing to you. Okay, and it's clear that God calls us to be good stewards of our resources. And that means to do exactly what we just said, to store up and save money. Okay, practical standpoint, these are just some practical situations in which saving money can be very helpful and effective for you. Having an emergency fund. There was a study done where I'm from in the United States. There's a study done that said that a large percentage of the population could not cover a $400 or €400 emergency. That means if something were to happen to you tomorrow and you had to pay €400 unexpectedly, that the vast majority of people would not be able to cover that expense. And that just shows that you are on a very, very rocky and a very poor financial foundation, and we need to start working towards having an emergency fund in place. A good guideline for that is to have about 3 to 6 months of expenses saved up just in case something bad happens. Your car breaks down, you have unexpected medical bills that aren't covered by your insurance or Social Security. Maybe you lose your job. Wow. Like in a situation like this, maybe there's some of you on here and that's the situation that's happened. And if you would have had that 3 to 6 months of emergency fund, you would be feeling a lot less anxiety or frustration or fear right now. And again, this isn't to condemn anyone or judge anyone. We're all in this journey together and we're going to get better. But that's one of the most important things that we can save up for, is to have a 3 to 6 months of expenses in emergency fund. That means if your monthly expenses are €3,000 or your monthly expenses are €8,000, then you would save up $2,400 to $4,800 and have that in a savings account ready for any unexpected emergencies. Okay, imagine saving and being able to pay for your next car in cash, or being able to pay university for your children, or saving up to buy a home, or making sure that you're taken care of in retirement. Okay, from a really practical standpoint, grandma and everybody else has always told us that it's important to have, that rainy day fund. You got to save that dollar for a rainy day in case you ever need it, right? And this is just common sense that tells us to prepare and plan for the future financially. Another thing, just like I mentioned in giving, I think it's important to save before you spend, especially early on when you're starting to save. If you wait until the end of the month to save what's left over, there's probably not going to be a lot left over. Okay, we're going to talk about in the budgeting section giving every euro a job in your budget. Okay, and so we're going to give some euros in your budget a job, and their job is going to be saved for the future. Okay. Oh, now here's a big topic. Okay, here's an important topic. And there may be some different opinions about this, but I'm going to share my perspective and what I believe is a biblical perspective about borrowing. Okay. So, most of the time, I'm going to, for the first minute or so, I'm going to give a little bit of a breakdown, explain some definitions, let's say, and make sure we're all on the same page and have a decent understanding of what borrowing money is. Okay. So most of the time when we borrow money, it's done through a loan or a mortgage or a credit card. There's there's endless types of borrowing opportunities, but when it comes to personal finance, these are some of the most common. Okay, taking out a loan, having a mortgage on a home, or using your credit card to buy and purchase goods. Okay, interest is the price that you pay to borrow money. Okay, and this is usually displayed in what's called an annual percentage rate. Okay, borrowing money is never free unless you're borrowing from your family or a friend, which I would argue is also never free. It's going to cost you in other areas, whether it be physically or sorry, not physically, emotionally or mentally, or cause strain on a relationship potentially. Borrowing can be a blessing, but especially when you're borrowing from banks, anytime you're going to be paying interest, you are never going to be borrowing for free. Okay. In fact, actually, I'm going to pause here just because this is something that I've experienced here in Spain. A lot of times, you'll see offers to finance goods at 0% interest. And the vast majority of the time, that is actually not true. Okay. What they're doing is they're marketing something as 0% interest, but then they charge you other fees instead. So, for example, if you bought a car on 0% interest, usually what they're going to do is charge you a percentage of the part that you finance up front, which just means that you're going to be paying your interest up front as opposed to, over the payment periods on the loan. Okay, but before I get too far, let me sort of explain, or let's walk through an example of how interest happens in a loan. Okay, so say that you borrow 100 euros from me at 20% interest. Okay, this is just the most basic example for how interest works. You borrow 100 euros from me at 20% interest. You pay me back over the next 10 periods. Okay, I would collect 12 euros from you per month or per period over those next 10 periods. And after all those periods are over, you will have paid me a total of 120 euros to borrow the initial 100 euros from me. Okay, does that make sense? So interest, again, is the price you pay to borrow money. So in this case, you paid 20 euros to borrow 100 euros. Okay, so now let's get into a sort of a conversation about, is borrowing okay? Is borrowing something that is good for us? I'm just going to go ahead and summarize this entire next few minutes by saying that borrowing money usually is not wise. Okay, there's few exceptions. Okay, and we're going to talk about one of those exceptions, and then we're going to talk about some things that I would recommend you not borrowing money for. Okay, usually borrowing money is not wise. Okay, why is that? Okay, let's talk from a biblical standpoint. Okay, Proverbs 22:7 says, "The rich rule over the poor, and the borrower is slave to the lender." Okay, Proverbs 22:26 says, "Do not be one who shakes hands in a pledge, one who is surety for debt." Psalms 37, "The wicked borrows and does not repay, but the righteous shows mercy and gives." Okay, just going back to this one quickly, Proverbs 22, "The rich rule over the poor, and the borrower is slave to the lender." There's nothing here that talks about borrowing money being a blessing? Do you want to be a slave? Do you want to be under someone else's rule? That doesn't sound very nice, right? If you owe someone money, he or she actually rules over you, whether their name is, um, ING Direct, or their name is Santander, or their name is La Caixa, or whoever it may be, or Sayat Credit. They rule over you, and you are not free as long as you owe them money. Okay. Now let's look at a practical standpoint. What could be some of the negative effects related to borrowing money? Okay. Number one is everything is more expensive if you go into debt to buy it. Okay. We just talked about how interest is the cost that it takes to borrow money. Okay. Also, there's opportunity cost involved, which I'll explain in another example here in a second. Okay. Most things depreciate or go down in value faster than we can pay them off. So, for example, usually when someone buys a new car, that car will go down in value by about 60% in the first 4 to 5 years, which means that you would basically have to be able to pay that car off faster than that in order for that to even to consider borrowing money for a car, which usually does not happen. And so when you're buying goods that depreciate faster than you are actually able to pay them off, on top of, again, the interest and things you're paying that make that purchase more expensive, it's just not a wise decision. Okay. And lastly, borrowing money weakens your financial foundation. Okay. And here's why. You are not easily able to handle emergencies, save, or give when you have payments. When you at the end of the month, you take home X number of euros. All right. Let's say you take home 1,000 euros a month. And if you know that, you owe your car payment that is 200 euros a month, and you owe on a personal loan that's 350 euros a month, and you owe on a credit card that is 100 euros a month. Now, basically, your income has already been decided before you're actually even able to determine yourself what you want to spend money on. You are working to pay back money to the bank or whatever financial institution or whoever you borrowed money from. And the reality is that your income is your most powerful wealth building tool. Okay. It's the most powerful tool you have to save and give and be in a healthy financial situation. So if you're just constantly every month giving your income away to financial institutions, it means you're on a rocky financial foundation. And I believe that's not what God wants for you. Okay. I've made a mistake with debt in my life. I've spent, I went to an expensive university and had lots of student loans and borrowed money on credit cards and did a lot of silly stuff with debt in my younger years. And I can promise you, I'm speaking from experience when I'm telling you that it weakens your financial foundation. And I don't want that for you. Thank you to God and people in my life and my wife who have helped me, and God's blessings in my life that I've been able to crawl out of that situation and build a more stable financial foundation. But I can promise you that borrowing money is not a way to financial health. Okay, so let's talk about a couple more things. One exception for borrowing money is a home mortgage. Okay, why? And that is because it typically does not go down in value. Buying property or buying real estate is generally considered to be an investment. Okay, and it's an investment because it generally goes up in value, not down in value. Remember, we said you don't want to borrow money for things that depreciate in value. However, if something is an asset or something that's a stable investment, then under the correct conditions, that would be an exception for borrowing money. If let's say you save up 20 or 25 or 30% of the price of the house, and then you finance a home mortgage for the rest, that would be one exception where borrowing money is okay. So I don't want to take away anybody's hopes and dreams who's been thinking, oh, but I want to get a house. I would say that in the correct situation, borrowing money for a home mortgage would be probably the only exception that we're going to mention here. Okay. What are some things that you should not borrow money for? Okay. How about a car or a moto? Should not borrow money for a phone or a computer. You should not borrow money for education or go into student loan debt for education. Again, I've been there and I can tell the tales. If you have any questions about this or disagreement, please come talk to me. I would love to tell you my story. I can promise you, you will not be interested in going into student loan debt after you hear it. Home improvements. This is a big thing. A lot of people go into debt or get personal loans to renovate a bathroom or a kitchen. I would not recommend that. Okay, credit card spending that you cannot pay off immediately. And lastly, pretty much everything else. Okay, so if there's any exceptions or anything that you're thinking about, I wonder if Adam says that I could borrow money for that. No, I would not recommend you to borrow money for pretty much anything except for this one exception, and only a home mortgage under a healthy situation. Okay. I did say that I was going to give you an example of opportunity costs related to borrowing. So I'm going to hit one more quick thing. And imagine, in the US, again, where I'm from, in the US, the average car payment is 540 euros a month. Most people where I come from have multiple cars in their families. And, even having multiple cars in Barcelona probably isn't very common. But even outside of Barcelona in the city where people, where families have multiple people who have to go to work and things like that in different places, having multiple cars or something like that could be pretty common. And the average family where I'm from spends 540 euros a month on their car payment. Here's the opportunity cost, okay? If you saved and invested that 540 euros that you were paying on your car every month, from age 30 to 70 in a good investment that got you about a 8 to 10% rate of return, you would have over 5.5 million euros at the end of that period. Again, just from the age of from 30 to 70, if you invested that same 540 euros you were paying for your car payment, you would have over 5 million euros. I hope you really love that car that you're paying payments on, because that is the cost. Not the 540 euros is not the cost. The cost is your future, your financial security, your retirement, your family legacy. So I hope that leaves a strong enough impression on you to end this section about borrowing money. Okay. All right, let's go to the next section, which is living within your means, okay? So in order to avoid debt, as I've so intensely advised you against, we must live on less than we earn, okay? I'm gonna jet through this last section because I want to get us to the budgeting, okay? That means we need to give every euro of our take-home pay a job, okay? And there's a couple of guidelines here that I'm going to get through quickly. If you want to take a snapshot of this screen, it might help you when you're going through your budgeting section, and Paul might give some guidance to this later on as well, but this is just a general guideline for your take-home pay. Giving, about 10%. Savings, I would say about 10 to 15%, okay? First, priorities, okay? And these are once you've given and once you've saved, your first priorities are what I call your 4 walls, okay? Your food, housing, utilities, and transportation. Housing, where either you're paying rent or your mortgage, should be no more than around 25% of your take-home pay. Okay, your utilities should include water, gas, the necessities, right? This isn't talking about internet and phone and all those other things. Those would be luxuries or add-on things. Utilities are your necessary things that you need to live. Okay, and transportation, whether that's your car, gas, metro tickets, whatever that looks like in your case. Okay, so here's some general guidelines. And then lastly, what really helps us live within our means is a couple of things. Okay, first is contentment. Okay, contentment is really important with our relationship to money. Ecclesiastes 5 says, whoever loves money never has enough. 1 Timothy 6 says, godliness with contentment is great gain. Okay, having pride or trying to keep up with others around you, say, oh, well, my neighbor has this, or my cousin just bought a new car, or they have a new house, or whatever. It can be pride can rise up within us and want to keep up with in English we say to keep up with the Joneses, or here in Spain that might be keeping up with the Lopezes or whatever. But Romans 12:2 says, be not conformed to this world, but let God transform you into a new person by changing the way you think. Okay, and that means our understanding what our purpose is with money. Okay, and last is envy. Proverbs 14:30 says, a heart at peace gives life to the body, but envy rots the bones. And this goes back to even the 10 commandments, that we should not covet what our other neighbor has. And envy means that just because we can't have something, we don't want others to have it. And that is one of the foundational things that can corrode and rot away our contentment and our happiness and life. And when we have contentment, as 1 Timothy 6:6 says, godliness with contentment is great gain. It puts us on a great foundation to live within our means, understand what we can afford in the season that we're in, that God has put us in, and really be okay with that and be happy with wherever we are. Okay, and with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Paul, and I look forward to any questions that you might have in the next section.
Okay, here we're back with you again. So let me get you my screen share up. There we go. There you go. Let's see. I think I have some of his stuff on money management in here. So we're just going to go to my next section. So let's see that quickly. Bear with me a second. I just want to make a comment on what he was saying about borrowing and credit cards and just something, and what was going on. What it struck me, it stood out to me, is we need to understand when we're using our credit card, we got to understand that we're spending somebody else's money. It's not our money. So somebody's going to charge us for it. So that's just kind of a thing that kind of came up. Living within your means. Sorry about this. I should have taken that out. Okay, anyways, this is, I'm learning how to do this online. So bear with me. What is a budget? This is a thing I want you to understand. The amount of money that is available for, required for, or assigned to a particular purpose. That's right out of Merriam-Webster Dictionary. A weekly budget for a family of 5, it's something you lay out, you map out, plan, organize, or strategize about. It's we use it as a budget as a noun. It's a statement. It's a budget, it's what we have. If it's a verb, it's something being proactive. And I think that's something we need to understand. And a budget is basically a written plan where you decide where each and every euro will go in the coming month. Remember, if you do a budget, you're making a decision. The money's not controlling you, and that's really important. I think we have to ask ourselves a question too. Why do a budget? Now, if you're sitting there with them there, I put in everyone, I send them out a PDF file of a budget worksheet. And so if you have it on your computer and you have a printer hooked up, go ahead and print that out. You can look at that as we talk about that. You can print it out at another time, or we'll send it out along. But I think we need to understand, why do a budget? I think it's really important to understand where it is. It says you figure out how much income you have and how much you'll need to spend for necessities. And then you have the difference between the two tells you how you're doing. And it says if you have money left over, you can allocate it towards savings or investment. And we understand that people have different income levels, and the cost of certain things are set, and we can't vary there, but we need to understand some of these things. But that's why we do a budget. So we understand that. And here somebody would say, oh my gosh, is budgeting a merely Western concept? Oh, you guys just do that in the United States. That doesn't work here in Europe. Oh, that doesn't work in Latin America. You know what? I've lived in a lot of places around the world. And I have a lot of friends who are businessmen, and people in business have to have a budget. They plan. It doesn't matter where you are in the world, you need to plan on what you're going to have. Okay, I think you understand. Budget as a word is not in the Bible, but the principle of budgeting certainly is. In Jesus' parable of the wise and foolish virgins in Matthew 25, 1-13, you're welcome to read that. You may already know the story. Understand, he's talking about 10 virgins who are supposed to go to a wedding party. 5 of them don't have enough oil for their lamps, and 5 have enough. The 5 who have enough get in. The 5 who don't have enough don't get in. And he just says they were foolish because they did not plan, did not have enough. That was a budget. So he wasn't making a big deal. They didn't say, well, somebody let him go get it later. See, there wasn't enough. Okay. Budgeting, and I think this is something really, really important. Budgeting requires gates, something that forces you to stop spending. No gates, no budget. And any budgeting system will work if it has gates. You must honor the gates. Okay, it's time to do our budget. And this is what we're looking at right now. It's up here, you're looking at a budget worksheet, and it's a guide. This is something just to sit down and calculate. Well, at the end, we'll share a few other guides on different things, how to manage your budget on a regular basis. But this is just to kind of help sit down and figure this out. This is a PDF file that I just sent out, and you're welcome to print it up. It's been adapted from some different things, but it's a good worksheet. So use this format just to create your budget. Okay, if married, work on this with your spouse. You need to do this together. It needs to be complete. Not all line items will apply to your situation, so don't worry about it. And the other thing is too, if you need to, you can add more. If you need to add more lines, add another line to one section. It's okay. It's just so you can adapt to what you need. It's a worksheet. That's what it is. Let's see, I'm looking at this here. Now we have to talk about the next thing, our budget by topic. Okay, it talks about our monthly expenses. And we're going to go down here and talk about giving, savings, and debt. Now this is where I want to share a personal story. As missionaries, I want to tell you, we have been supported by some people for our complete missionary career. We have friends who have stuck there for over 28 years, every month, giving an offering every month to make this our missionary career a possibility. Now, the only one way they're able to do that, because they have kids too, and now their kids are older. They have to budget, they have to plan, and to think about this. And I want to say too, we also have been supporting missionary family. There's one family that's the woman of the couple. She was a disciple of ours in Mexico, and we supported her before she got married. We've been supporting them for well over 10 years. And part of that was with our children. Our children are growing now, so they have to take some of their own control. So we gave, and I want you to know, we gave them enough money every week, and what we call an allowance, so they could give to the church and the missionary family. So and they could feel it. It wasn't just a coin I had left over my pocket. We had a allotted amount of money we gave them. And out of that, they had to give to the church, and they had to give to the missionary family. And they knew them personally. At one point, this is our disciple. She was the babysitter when our kids were little. So they knew her personally. So they were giving to somebody they knew and believed in. And to this day, we still give, and we're excited about that. Okay, enough said on that. Giving. We need to be giving, as Adam said, to our local church. We need to set aside some time for local ministry, or ministry to the poor, or for the advance of the gospel. It could be missions, etc. The ICB gives to Agape. For some people say Agape, well, I don't know a whole lot about Agape. If you don't know, the international name is CRU, formerly known as Campus Crusade for Christ. So it's not just something here in Spain, it's an international ministry as well. And we need to think about extended family emergencies. What happens if we have somebody in our family get sick and they need some medicine, they just don't have the money? We need to think about that. That's also giving. Savings. Now, we have savings for emergencies. We talked about the emergency funds. Or vacation. We got to set it aside. That doesn't mean you go put money in your credit card and pay it later. That's just being you're borrowing. It's just you're taking a vacation on somebody else's money. Now we also have savings for long-term, and you need to specify. And I think Eric said even, Adam, I don't know if he mentioned it or not, but I even say having a different account. So because, I have this much money in my account here, I can spend it. No, my savings set aside, so I don't look at that as a spendable money. And you need to specify debt. You need to repay credit cards. That is part of your budget. And repay other debts. That is also part of your monthly budget. All this stuff has got to be taken into account. Giving, saving, debt. Okay. Our budget by topic as we continue on. Personal monthly expenses, we look at housing, rent or mortgage, home repairs / maintenance, that's a real expense. Utilities, electric, gas, water. We could took it, I even put on there, I broke it down a little bit more than Eric did. Adam did, I'm sorry. It says, you did home insurances and taxes. That's real because you have to insure. That people think, even as a renter, I pay renter's insurance. If something breaks down, it gets paid for. Okay, internet, TV, mobile phones. In today's world, many times it's an expense that we have. Impuestos sobre bienes inmuebles. Those if you own a property. Pagos de la comunidad de los vecinos. There may be other things that are going on. Auto and transport. And I break it down a little bit further too and say, repay a car loan. What's that look like? Because then you begin to look at where's my money going? How much you paying on gas? Your maintenance and repair on a car? Your insurance? Your bus and train transportation? Now, family. Your kids' school costs. That means books, notebooks, pens and paper, copies. You got to count that. Sports and music. That's also important. Allowances, other, whatever. You need to specify. Don't just say other. Write it down exactly where it's going so you know. That's important. Okay? And then we're coming to another thing. And we're going to household and personal. We're bringing it down more so we have a better view of where our money is going, and then we can begin to evaluate. Your groceries, paper goods for pets, general things. And you've got clothing, dry cleaning in that area. Gifts, those count too. Birthdays, etc. Christmas, whatever you do. When you get your hair cut, your nails done. Household and yard, if you have whatever you spend around the house on household goods. Now, we're not talking about maintenance on the house, like you're painting a wall. That's not normal. But things you buy for the household. Maybe a new vase, something you go to IKEA and pick up for the kitchen. That's household. Entertainment, when you eat out. Now, I added this line myself. This wasn't it. Those cafecitos. When we go out, we can go to all the different coffee shops. Each coffee is €1.50. And as a family, you may be surprised how much you're spending on coffee. You need to count it. Other, specify it. Medical. You may have the social medicine system here, and that's fine. But you need to think about expenses, anything outside that you may use for whatever reason, dental cleaning, whatever you may need. You have doctors, hospital, medicines, medical insurance, other. And the others specify. And then miscellaneous, your hobbies, your tech, which is a new computer, whatever that costs. Your personal allowances, other. And then you add it up. Now, this is a worksheet for the month, so you add it up. So you need to go through every month to really average it out and see where you're at. I think that's really, really important. And you get to, and I just want to say there, whoops, that went back here. I just want to say a word to husbands and wives. One of you probably has a better knack for handling financial details than the other. You know who that is, and we're just not going to say much about this, but let's let that partner use his or her gift, but both of you must know the state of your finances. Somebody will be managing the finances, but that doesn't mean you can wash your hands. I'm done with it. I don't have to do anything about it. You need to do this. Often is the wife who is the first to spot financial problems on the horizon. That's true. Husbands, listen carefully. Or if it's a wife, listen carefully. Both you need to listen to one another. And the communication is always a good, important part of a relationship. Now, Adam had some recommendations. I don't know if you, was going to mention some things here, but I don't know if you had, before he gets into this, I want to recommend a book. It says What the Bible Actually Says About Money, 31 Meditations. And I know it's available on Amazon. I know Scott, the author, personally. He wrote the book Funding Your Ministry and several other books as well with a ministry called Navigators for over 30 years on finances. So this is just a 31 short devotional, definitely worth reading for a couple. And Suzanne and I are going through it now. So I'd highly recommend it. And make it look at where our finances and a lot of it has to do with what we look with our attitude. So I think I will stop sharing the screen here. And I think we need to listen to Adam's going to talk us about some different possibilities on Google Sheets or something. You there, Adam? As he comes back on here. There he is.
Hey, yeah, I'm here. So basically the worksheet that Paul just shared with you, for those of you who are more technologically advanced, I have a spreadsheet. Basically, basically it'll be on Google Sheets, and I can share that with you. So just let me know if you're interested, and I can send that over to you by email this afternoon or something. That way, when you actually sit down and start looking at this, or maybe, hey, I'm going to make my first budget this month, actually have a good place to start, and you don't have to start from scratch.
Okay. Now we have a bunch of questions here. And maybe we even answered some of them as we went through. Mark is going to come back online. Mark, turn your camera on, I think would be good. And you had, I have some of these questions, and Adam, stay online too. Questions have come up. Why don't you give us a kind of shot at what, as you filter through some of these questions, Mark?
Sure. Yeah. First of all, just want to say on behalf of everybody listening in as well, that we say thank you to you guys, Paul, Adam. Thank you guys for sharing what you shared. We appreciate the effort you put into creating this material and putting it together. There truly is so much to talk about here, and to encapsulate it in a 50-minute webinar is quite difficult because there's just so many pieces. But you guys, fantastic job. Thank you. We do have a bunch of questions, and I'm going to start with one that kind of seems to be a running question. There were maybe 3 or 4 different people who asked a question about this particular topic, and that is the topic of long-term savings and retirement. And so maybe we'll try to push those into one question. While I'm asking this and while you guys are answering, I'll also throw it out there to everybody listening in. If you do have a question, use the chat on the bottom of your Zoom screen and enter your question there, and we'll try to get to those, as many as we can here in the next couple of moments. But the question is on retirement. And so Maria asked this question: what would be a best practice for long-term saving? If I want to save for my retirement, what would be the best options? Banking retirement funds, capital market investments, etc. Thank you. And of course, there are others that kind of approach this topic as well. What do you guys have to say about that?
I'm going to let Adam take that one.
Okay, so best strategy for long-term savings. Let's start there. So I think the first step, before you even start thinking about investing and long-term savings, first you want to make sure that you're not in debt. So if you have any debt that needs to be paid off outside of your home mortgage, okay, so again, the home mortgage is the exception here. But if you have car debt, if you have student loan debt, if you have credit card debt, etc., that should be your number one priority. I'm a sort of disciple and follower of someone by the name of Dave Ramsey. If you guys are not familiar with him, I would encourage you to look him up, and I'll list him as one of the resources. I think that was another one of the questions that was asked. He recommends that you have an emergency fund of 1,000 euros before you do anything. Okay, so here's just a couple of practical steps before we get to the long-term savings investing. First step, 1,000 euros of just set aside for a beginner emergency fund, just in case something pops up, okay? Once you have those 1,000 euros saved up, you start attacking your debt, okay? Everything that comes in, basically that you don't spend on food and shelter and transportation in the 4 walls goes to paying off your debt. Then you want to focus on your 3 to 6 months of expenses, which is an emergency fund. Okay, and that's what I would call sort of short-term savings. Okay, once you have those things in place, now it would be a good time to start thinking about long-term savings and investing. Okay, one thing I would mention is sort of like Paul said, you want to have those things in your savings in separate accounts. There's different retirement accounts that are available, etc. Now, as far as where to put your money, I would recommend putting your money in what are called mutual funds. And these things are available worldwide. You can find different kinds of accounts here in Spain or in Europe that allows you to purchase these funds. Somebody also put it in the chat. Please tell me where I can get an 8 to 10% return rate of return. Basically, in the stock market, even if you have just like an index fund or something like that, that should give you historically an 8 to 10% rate of return, not accounting for inflation. So inflation over time is going to erode a little bit that rate of return. But for long-term savings and investing, I would encourage you to look into something that are called mutual funds. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I would add to that one thing I've learned over the years. And man, I've gone to the school of hard knocks on this stuff. Get into an investment, make sure you know what you're getting into. So many people are tempted by that percentage rate of return that they'll get into something without really knowing what they're doing. There are so many hidden fees, so many different operational costs, and those all chip away. So for me, I've done a lot of different things. I've bought individual stocks. I've invested in all sorts of mutual funds. And sometimes I've done ones I didn't understand. But for me, here I am almost 50. I've come to the place where I've realized I want to keep it as simple as possible. So I invest in what's called a no-load mutual fund. It is a target retirement date fund. It is not sexy at all. It is, you know, the risk is adjusted by my age, and I'm thankful to say that I've gotten about 8 to 9% return on that, actual return in the last 6 years now that I've been in that exclusively, and then I've got a couple other things too. But just be smart, know what you're getting into. If you go to somebody, a financial advisor, and they show you something, and you walk away and you don't understand it, they have not done their job. They need to teach you what this is. And if you, again, don't buy anything you don't understand, don't get into anything that's just over your head. Keep it simple. Make sure you know what you're doing.
That's such good advice. I want to add one more thing there, Mark. That's such good advice. And finding a personal financial advisor is so critical. We can tell you some names or some tips or some things, but you want to make sure you really understand it. So having a financial advisor, it needs to be someone that you really trust and understand. Okay. You also have to realize that these people, depending on what type of advisor they are, may be incentivized to sell you or to get you to invest in certain things. Okay. So as Mark said, I want to echo, you have to understand it for yourself. Don't just let someone else tell you blindly where to put your money. Study it. And if you need to, do it as simple as possible. A lot of times the simplest way is the most effective way long term.
I think one of the things is looking at this and talked about mutual funds, different funds, finding something are reputable. If you've never heard about it before, it's probably not a reputable mutual fund. Be sure that they're all people who actually have to have a license to have a mutual fund, to manage it, different things. So somebody's going to be done. But I'd like to take a step back. I mean, we're talking about budgeting here in this webinar. And this is, I think, taking it a step further, which is great. If people are planning ahead, is really good. But we need to come back to the basics. The question I have for many people, do you have a budget? Are you planning it? What are you looking at? I think if you look at too, is you paid off your debt, like Adam said, and you're coming down to the point, okay, I'm managing my bucket, my money. I'm not going out and buying, looking at how I can buy the new fastest boat, the fastest car, or whatever it may be. I'm going to go this expensive trip on my credit cards. But you're coming back to being real. What is my real budget? And what are my priorities? Because it's saying, am I sacrificing my giving to the church or the body of Christ who's in need over because I want to feel good about something that I'm doing? I'm not saying that some of these things aren't good, but we need to get back to budgeting. I think, Adam, I think you probably know offhand that you mentioned Dave Ramsey, and I was looking at his website this last week. He has some free apps on his thing about budgeting. The Google spreadsheet's good, but he has a free app. So I think I can't remember his web page. I could look it up. You could Google it, Dave Ramsey. But you can also, maybe you know it well, Adam, just to put it down in the chat box down there, what it is, so people can grab that. So that would be a good thing. We're coming to kind of the end here too. So I think there's really, and I think the bottom line is this is going to take some time. As a family or an individual, whatever it may be, take the time. And that worksheet that I put up is a worksheet just to help you physically sit down and write things down. One of the things that Dave Ramsey talks about, or even some of the things Scott talks about, is really important, is that we need to understand that most people too, when they're using their credit cards, they end up spending more money. Statistics in the United States, a study was done, when somebody goes into McDonald's, if they use their credit card, they spend $7. If they pull out of their pocket and pay with cash, with bills, they spend about the average of $4.50. So it's easy, the credit card, and very much in Spain here, we use our ATM cards to pay at the grocery store, so if we don't have cash. But if you're having trouble controlling your finances or how you're doing things, you may need to adjust. Think about that. So take those into account. And I think
these are great, Paul. I just so appreciate how you said, let's come back to budgeting. And that really is step one in this whole process. Really important just to get back to that. And so, again, want to say thank you for your wisdom, for your input, for sharing, you guys. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I just want to remind you as well that if you have more questions, you can email us at equip@icbspain.com. You can also request the handouts. I will tell you that the handouts will be emailed your way for those who registered for this course. If you're listening on demand and not a part of this live interaction, again, you can email us at equip@icbspain.com and let us know you watch this. And if you have got questions or you request that form, we'd be happy to send that your way. And so again, thank you everybody for coming. Thank you, Paul and Adam, for sharing. We've got more of these coming up. More webinars are on your way. We've got a Spanish one we're going to kick off in about 15 minutes, the same one. But I also want to let you know that Wednesday night, this coming Wednesday, we have a class on structure for families presented by Brandy Carano and Susan Luciani. I got problems with my Italian as much as my Spanish. Next Saturday, we have a class on forgiveness presented by Joey Shaw. We've also got a class on marriage coming up in about a week and a half on a Wednesday night. Another one coming up on preparing a resume. So many more coming down the road, so be watching for that. Again, thank you to all for listening in. It's been a joy to have you with us. God bless you, and enjoy the rest of your Saturday. Bye-bye.